Podcast, a podcast offering discussions and tutorials on nerdy subjects for people who aren't necessarily nerdy themselves. With you today is myself, your nerdy tutor Georgia. With me here today, the spoke queen, my mom.
Oh yes, I'm wearing my spokeswoman T-shirt, which has a bike on it.
Mm-hmm.
And ordinarily at this time of the year, it's kind of fun on Facebook because I see all the past ones. Ordinarily this time of year, I would be riding my bike from San Francisco to Los Angeles over 7 days, camping every night, for AIDS Life Cycle, which raises money for AIDS research and support. And I'm not riding this year, but I'm feeling the vibe because in my memories every day I've been getting pictures from past life cycles. The picture today you'll appreciate was me with the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence, with 4 of them in big old headdresses, total makeup. And for people who aren't familiar with the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence, they are based in San Francisco. There are groups in LA.
It's a drag queen troupe, right?
It's a drag queen nuns. And they do white makeup with very stark things, and they have headdresses like the old flying nun headdresses.
Oh, the habits.
The habits. And they come on the first day and on the last day. On the first day, they hand out strawberries on Devil's Slide. They hand us strawberries as we bike by. You don't stop. They just reach out and you grab your strawberry, which is great fun. And on the last day, on the sixth night, they come and we have a vigil on the beach for everybody who's passed of AIDS. Mm-hmm. So that was on my feed today. So therefore, I'm wearing my spokeswoman T-shirt.
Now, do you think you'll be able to... No, they obviously didn't do the ride this last year or this year, obviously, because of the COVID.
Last year, I did ride all 545 miles. I actually did some bonus miles. And I have this year as well.
But you're just not actually doing the trip.
But not doing the trip. Last year I did it over a month. Mm-hmm. And this year I've just done 21 miles a day.
Mm. Yeah. But do you think that you'll be able to get to it next year?
It's already scheduled. We've already got dates.
Yes.
I'm all excited, so I'll be back out there fundraising.
Nice.
Yeah.
Because I can remember actually like picking you up at the end of those there and taking you to a nice luxury hotel to kind of enjoy yourself for a day because you had been camping for the last week.
Yeah, it was marvelous because after having 5 minutes in a fire shower, which is what we get, the showers are in a semi-truck, and you get your 5 minutes of hot water, and it's you get a kind of semi-private stall, but the dressing area is
very open,
which is fine. But after getting your 5 minutes of hot water, you have arranged for me to have a whirlpool bath. Mm-hmm. At the end of the ride, and that has been, and we've gone out to dinner at Ruth Chris and had a really nice meal rather than me having to stand in line, cafeteria style.
And you often got like the veggie because that was the quickest thing you could grab.
Well, I actually got the veggie because it's the only way, because I fast from meat on Wednesdays and Fridays. Mm. And you either go all vegetarian or you go all meat. It's a band.
Yeah.
It's very controlled because there's 3,000 of us total. Yeah. 2,200 riders and 800 support. Mm-hmm.
It's a big thing.
It's a big thing. It's huge.
Oh, yeah.
It's actually the largest single fundraiser in the world when you take into account how many people participate and fundraise.
Per capita?
Yes.
All right. Cool.
So,
my favorite per capita is... my favorite per capita story is that if you go back to watch... And I love this movie, and I love this little, 15, 20-minute movie when it was there. I always wanted to watch it every time we went there. So in Disneyland, there was Captain EO.
Oh, I love Captain EO.
Which...
Not anymore, but I did.
Oh, Angelica I still love it too. Angelica Houston, Michael Jackson.
Well, no, I meant it's not there anymore.
It's not there anymore, no, but it did get a revival for a period of time.
Okay.
After Michael Jackson's death, they brought it back to the theater for a number, almost a complete decade before they eventually... replaced it with something else, and a lot of people were very upset when it left, myself included. I actually have both the 3D version and the 2D version.
Oh, wow. So you have your own glasses to watch the 3D?
No, because the effects don't work quite as well on a LCD TV, unfortunately. But I have the movie still. on my computer, and so it's very easy to and there's been a lot of recordings of it over the past couple of years as well.
Yeah.
But if you look into what it, in theory, what it finally costs to make that movie per minute, because it's only about a 18-minute long movie at the end of the day. It cost nearly $26 million to make, because you have to remember, directed by Francis Ford Coppola. Effects by George Lucas and his workshop here, Skywalker Ranch and Industrial Light and Magic.
Yeah.
Starring Angelica Houston and Michael Jackson. Like you almost couldn't have like a bigger blockbuster sort of like thing at the end of the day.
For like 10 minutes, or what is it?
Again, it's like an 18-minute long movie.
18. Yeah.
Or it could be a lot shorter here. It might even be almost like 12 minutes or something too. I admittingly don't know, but one of those things we do have is the internet.
Well, okay, so while you look that up, I'll tell you my favorite statistical thing. You and I have stood on top of the largest pyramid in the world by volume. And that is a pyramid in El Mirador, which is in Pitan, Guatemala. And it's a huge Mayan site, but this pyramid is massive. Now, it's not the tallest, but it's the largest by volume. It has several decks on it as you climb up it. And you do climb up it. And I climbed up it for Worldwide Knitting Day, and you took a picture of me knitting on top.
I do remember that.
And you climbed up first, and I took a picture of you from one of the platforms lower down, looking up. And then you climbed down first and took a picture of me.
Yes, I do recall that. So Captain EO, 17 minutes long, budget of $24 million. So at the time, until Avatar, it was the most expensive movie ever created per minute.
Per minute, wow.
So, which I think is really cool.
That is cool. That's great. I one of the many wonderful things about Disney.
Absolutely, and again, for its time, 23 million. This would have been back in like 1987 when it debuted here. So I'm sure if you took that up to today's numbers, it'd be like almost $80-90 million.
Yeah.
Inflation. So actually, speaking of Disney, we're going to go back to Disney Plus.
Okay.
And we're going to be watching this week Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
Cool.
So to get us ready for Falcon and the Winter Soldier, we'll do a recap of who these people are, where they're coming from, and some of the major differences, obviously, in their comic book origins and their Marvel incarnations. So let's start off with the good guy. Let's start off with the Falcon. Now, a lot of this, we're going to talk about Captain America, but we're not actually going to be talking about Captain America. Both the Falcon and Winter Soldier are very integral to Captain America, Steve Rogers, here at the end of the day.
And I think I've mentioned before, he is my least favorite of the Marvel characters. I find him so serious and kind of dour and not warm.
I see him as being a lot more serious. He's obviously the dad of the group.
He is the conscience of the group.
Mm-hmm. Again, what's interesting about, I think, Captain America here at the end of the day is that he is a soldier at the end of the day, And as a soldier, you're, especially in his case where he was Captain America, he's supposed to be the best human being amongst all of them here, this beacon, symbol of hope at the end of the day. I can understand from a certain vantage point here where you would need to be quite so serious and quite so maybe dour and, heartless. But what I find very interesting
I find him judgmental.
It's also very judgmental, too. I mean,
I just say, yeah.
You wear America as your literal part of your name, and you wear the flag as your costume. You do tend to lose a little bit of your personality and humor there at the end of the day.
That would presume that you had a personality.
Beyond, greatest human being ever.
Yeah.
But again, this has been kind of an interesting to speak about Tony Stark as well. an interesting notion at the end of the day is that Steve Rogers, who has been nothing but a pure soldier, in order for him to be his best, he needs to get a life. And again, and then Tony Stark here, who is this full of life and bubbly energy, and it's just like the life of the party everywhere he goes.
Has a sense of humor.
It has a sense of humor.
Does appear to be warm.
Yes, he does. Has a kid.
As a kid.
In order for him to be the best person ever, he has to actually sacrifice himself to sacrifice himself in order to do that here, and then make a point of saying that here in the first movie at the first Avengers movie, when you actually get Steve Rogers and Tony Stark in the same room. It's like you have Tony Stark makes a point of saying, like, you're just a test tube thing. You're not anything. You don't have anything at all. And then Steve Rogers says, well, like, you're not the one to make the major play at the day. You're not the one to make the sacrifice at the end. And again, it's by the end of the Endgame here, you actually get the flip. It's like, Tony Stark is willing to make the sacrifice and makes, the ultimate sacrifice to do what would be theory the ultimate good. And then Steve, in contrast to that, he makes the ultimate, he basically finally gets greedy and doesn't return to the present, goes back into the past and enjoys the rest of the rest
has
of
the life that he sacrificed.
Yeah, has the life that he wanted at the end of the day.
Well, and the other so that in ironic,
Mm-hmm.
right? The other great irony I find is in civil wars, they take positions that I think are
Contrary to what they would have been. Yeah.
Yeah.
You would have expected like Tony to be kind of more of the rebel here and not the one that would be like, we need to have a leash on us.
Yeah.
Versus Captain America, you would thinking, we should follow the governments here, but he's actually gotten to the point where he's gotten very deceptive, very skeptical and suspicious of governments and thinking that they're actually going to do a lot more harm than good. I mean, S.H.I.E.L.D. being the most recent example of that. And so I find that, again, the Marvel movies have done a great job of being contrarian with their major characters here at the end of the day. And really,
keeping it from becoming static.
Yeah, and it's done a really good job of expanding on these characters as well. Like the Tony Stark we see in the first Iron Man is not the same Tony Stark by the time we get to Endgame, and even Steve Rogers is almost not the same person as when he started from Captain America, the first soldier versus Endgame here at the end of the day. They've changed quite a bit over that period of time.
Yeah.
Which I really appreciate at the end of the day. So to start us off with, we'll talk about the Falcon here. So introduced in 1969, Samuel Wilson was rescued by Steve Rogers, acting as Captain America, from a Caribbean island where he apparently was being experimented on by the Red Skull. They fought their way out of it here, and somehow along the way, and this is a term you're going to hear quite a bit here. It's called the Cosmic Cube. There's not the Cosmic Cube. There are multiple Cosmic Cubes at the end of the day.
As opposed to the cube that contains
the Space Stone.
Yeah.
Which was actually, okay, so let's go ahead and talk about the Cosmic Cubes here real quickly, actually. So the Cosmic Cubes was meant to be that thing basically in, in Captain America, the First Soldier, so when the Red Skull goes to the one Nordic place and takes this cube, that's meant to originally be the Cosmic Cube at the end of the day. It's later retconned to be the Space Stone in disguise, but the Cosmic Cubes are almost omnipresent sort of like wish-granting devices almost. They have the ability to warp reality, control energy and matter to a certain extent, and almost create wishes out of whoever's using it here at the end of the day. And the reason I say there actually can be multiple Cosmic Cubes is there has been multiple Cosmic Cubes over periods of time. Basically what you do is you create a force field that creates a portal to a alternate universe where you have creatures known as Beyonders.
Oh, okay.
Which again, hopefully never comes up in Marvel in the MCU because it's already confusing as itself on its own. You suck out some of that power. It takes the form of a cube. Sometimes it can take form of other geometric shapes. Excuse me. But typically they're cubes. And typically they're sought after by people who are not, spectacularly superpowered here. Typically by people who don't have superpowers at the end of the day at all. So again, like the Red Skull, Doctor Doom. Although Doctor Doom has had kind of a cool sort of he's a dictator. He's kind of like Iron Man, but he's also like a mad magician at the same time. Like he's a really cool villain that we'll see one day.
Okay.
No clue who will win, but we'll see him one day in the MCU because they are making a Fantastic Four.
Ooh.
I don't know the details of it here. There's a gentleman by the name of Movie Bob who has a really, really great version of what the Fantastic Four movie could be, which, I don't think they'll ever make that version of it.
Sort of its own version of fanfic.
Yeah, so he literally painted an entire screenplay for like what would be a theoretical Fantastic Four movie. And again, it's really, really good on a certain level. The Thing fights a clay version of the Hulk.
Oh.
So it's supposed to be like the Puppet Master, which is a guy that's kind of controlled people in the past through different events. It's supposed to be the main. In Movie Bob's idea here is the main antagonist, and in his office space, like in his building that he owns, on the ground level, there's like these wax clay versions of all the Avengers, and they're actually like robots underneath, and they go and attack the Fantastic Four. So you're fighting what are these fake Avengers versus the Fantastic Four. And the Thing fights the Hulk, because obviously the Hulk would be the bigger, stronger one. And I think at the end of it, Thing's like, I wonder how I match up against the real one.
Okay, so is it bad that when I think of Fantastic Four, I think of the cartoon?
Nope, I don't think you're wrong. You're thinking of the 90s cartoon that we used to watch.
Yeah.
Which is probably, again, not the most accurate version, because you would expect, because there should have been a lot more bickering with the characters. But again,
you can't have that with kids.
You can't technically, no. The characters were kind of meant to be a little bit more bickering a little bit. Like, they were a family, but, like, they weren't, like, a very good family.
Well, lots of families bicker.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. No, yeah, I mean, like...
Just saying.
I agree. But, yeah, no, Fantastic Four, I think, the cartoon, again, I think of that when I think the Fantastic Four as well. And actually, the Fantastic Four are a basis for how I think of characters all the time, too, because they're very... I like to make very contrarian characters at the end of the day.
But the nice thing about the Fantastic Four is they each slide into a nice, neat little slot.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
In terms of the balance.
So cosmic cubes, we'll hear that a couple times mentioned when talking about both the Winter Soldier and the Falcon here. Because it, oddly enough, for whatever reason, comes up quite a bit. So the so as a part of being experimented with the cosmic cube, apparently Sam Wilson gets the ability to communicate with a Falcon that he owned at the time, known as Redwing. So that's why he was called the Falcon, and he was protecting over Harlem initially as a black superhero created in 1970s wood. Eventually, about 5 years later, he was given a pair of wings by the Black Panther, which then allowed him to fly. So it wasn't until, so it wasn't initially that he could fly initially, it was later on. And Falcon's actually been a very loyal companion and sidekick to Steve Rogers. They have numerous adventures over the time. There's been a number of cases and times where Steve Rogers has, put down the shield and walked away from the mantle, with the Falcon actually coming in and teaching the next Captain America, the person who would take up the mantle, to do that at the end of the day.
Yeah, and why should he have to teach somebody else? Well,
I think the context really is that, especially in a lot of what would have been like 80s and 90s, and I think a little bit more so as we get to the 90s, there's a lot of times in which superheroes were supplanted by new versions of that same character in some cases.
Yeah.
So as an example, famously, Batman...
So you could modernize him and...
Well, not necessarily modernize him, but like sometimes what you would have is as very famously as an example, there's the character Bane that was introduced in Batman, and Bane's most defining feature is that he actually, in the comic books, broke Batman's back. And when he broke Batman's back, you know, there was still this huge crime wave going on because Bane had purposely just released all these super criminals from Arkham. And as a result here, they needed a new Batman. And so instead of recruiting what would have been Nightwing at the time, they actually got a different superhero known as Azazel.
I like the name.
It's a really cool name, don't get me wrong. But he is not a Christian fundamentalist. That's not the right way to describe him. He is a radicalized, programmed Templar, is the best way to describe him. So, like, there's like a Templar kind of like organizational sort of thing. It's like the Church of Saint Dumas or something of that nature. I don't remember, or the Order of Dumas. And so he was trained as like a Templar essentially with like the broadsword and like stuff like that. And Batman recruits him to be the new Batman here, but over a period of time, because obviously he's not initially he's a very stable individual here, and he eventually starts getting a little bit more militaristic and a lot more violent than what Batman initially would have been. He creates like these gauntlets with like razored fingers on them that like shoot out his batarangs at, and he ends up actually beating Bane initially here as well. But then he dons like this full like metallic sort of like Batman costume with like these retractable wings, and it's like really bulky, and it's a very stark difference to what was the original Batman at the end of the day.
Because part of Batman's charm is that Batman is human.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas it's part of Tony Stark's charm too.
Yeah. Because
so many of these are sort of superhuman.
Well, I mean, I think what a lot of the charm of Batman, for me at least, has always been is that Batman is very much a, this omnipresent, planning character that will plan for everything, always get the right guy at the end of the day, a good person, but willing to use violent means, to do it outside of murder.
Morally driven.
Yeah, very morally driven. I mean, there's certain cases to be made that he is actually a psychopath.
Aren't they all, though? I mean, realistically,
mm-hmm.
having that kind of power and then also that kind of responsibility, and you see it in Kazam, which
mm-hmm.
I thought portrayed it actually fairly well, even though it was very campy. Was things have consequences,
mm-hmm.
and you need to be. It's part of Spider-Man's decision to back off.
Oh yeah.
And realize that he's too young for that kind of responsibility having that kind of superpower sounds really nice until you realize all the responsibility and that you really can't have a life of your own. And Tony Stark kind of manages it with Pepper, but Pepper's pretty tolerant. I wouldn't be that tolerant.
No, yeah.
But they have such moral responsibility and
at a certain point that takes something away from you.
Yeah.
Well,
that's a burden.
Well, again, I've always thought it'd be, it's a common thing that comes up quite a bit in different stories here. Again, when you see enough stories, you eventually find out like you gain power, but you lose something as a result. Again, go back to Full Metal Alchemist, the law of equivalent exchange.
Yeah.
You give up, you get something, but you lose something as a result. In order to gain knowledge, Edward loses his brother at the end of the day, and as well as his leg. And in order to get his brother back, he loses his arm. Or in some cases, you lose something, very emotionally at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And I think that's very much a given sort of thing here at the end of the day. So again, Falcon here, and going back to him, he's basically like the shadow to Captain America here at the end of the day. Always right beside him, working with him during the events of Civil War in the comics. Now, the Civil War of the MCU is a lot different from what was that of the comics at the end of the day. The comics version of the Civil War was based around, there was a superhero that had somewhat nuclear abilities and he blew up, taking out his own team and a bunch of other people with him, including like 60 some odd children here.
Ooh.
I know, yeah, it's not the greatest thing in the world, or not a great way to go.
Doesn't sound nice.
No. But as a result of that civil war here, or that initial event that kicks off Civil War, they passed the Superhero Registration Act. Now, in this case, Tony Stark is in favor of the Superhero Registration Act, believing that that superheroes need to register themselves with the government in order to, so we know who's got what powers and who to either keep an eye on and, how we can manage, casualties, deaths, and collateral damage at the end of the day. Because again, you have all these superheroes acting out, and basically, you might have saved the day, but who's repairing whatever it is that you destroyed in the process?
Your consequences.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, unfortunately, though, Steve Rogers is against it here. He doesn't like the idea of people knowing who, other people's identity at the end of the day, and doesn't like the idea of the government, thinks the government, again, because again, by this point here, like, Steve Rogers has been both in the favor of the U.S. government, out of favor of the U.S. government, with S.H.I.E.L.D., out of side of S.H.I.E.L.D., numerous different times throughout the comic book history here, to the point that he kind of doesn't trust, government at all, which would be very similar to how he was in the MCU's Civil War. And
how real life is as well. I mean, there have been all sorts of documented cases of people switching sides. It's certainly the theme in the Bourne movie, series of movies, is that when you're at that level, you see things that are immoral or not okay, and at some point that you act out against it.
Mm-hmm. At a certain point here, you have to say enough is enough, and you have to, either work with it or go completely against it. Yeah. And then at a certain point, you see a lot of people just kind of break and be like, no, that's just how it's done. But this is wrong. But this is how it's done. Like they create that sort of mental awareness to themselves that, yeah, I know what I'm doing is horrible, but it's for a greater good, sort of. They make excuses for it.
Yeah.
And again, Captain America and a lot of other heroes. So initially, as an example here, Spider-Man likes the idea of the Superhero Registration Act, and as basically what would be like the quote unquote hero of New York City here, presents himself as Peter. Takes off his mask in front of everybody, saying, "I've signed up with I've signed the registry. I've worked with I've given up my information to the Superhero Registration Act. My name is Peter Parker." And throughout the course of Civil War, like he's hounded. He loses his job at the Daily Bugle as a photographer, which has been one of his one of the jobs that's kept him afloat.
He's got to make a living somehow.
Yeah. Well, he actually ends up getting sued by the Daily Bugle for for lying to them over so many years of taking pictures of Spider-Man when he was actually Spider-Man. His Aunt May, his home gets basically burglarized, and he can't get a moment of sort of rest at all for anything, and finds out pretty quickly here that
not a good idea.
It wasn't a good idea to announce who he was at the end of the day.
Yeah.
He doesn't have the resources to protect himself like a Iron Man at the end of the day. Because everyone at this point knows that Tony Stark is Iron Man, but
But he can build a fortress.
He can build a fortress. He's got all these different
higher security.
armors.
He doesn't need to earn a living to support himself.
Mm-hmm. So, by the end of the Civil War here, Spider-Man actually joins up with Captain America, against the Superhero Registration Act, and kind of wishes he could go back. It's not for about at least another 2 years where he makes a deal with Mephisto, which was quote unquote the Marvel Devil,
right?
To have everybody's memory erased of him, of who he was, and then. But the course of that also brings back like Harry Osborn and Norman Osborn as well, which creates a whole bunch of different conflicts and issues later on, which is great actually for a comic book fan. Repercussions keep going and going and going and going.
Because everything has consequences.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, that's really what this is all about.
Mm-hmm.
Everything has consequences.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So a major turning point in the Falcon here, it comes in comes about 7 years ago in 2014. So there was an event in which Steve Rogers' super soldier formula was neutralized.
Ooh.
And so as a result of not having the super soldier formula in him anymore, he rapidly aged to a 90-year-old man.
Which is how old he really is.
Yeah, so he's he by the time of the comics he would have been like 90 plus years old at the time. So he rapidly aged to a 90-year-old man, and passed on the mantle of Captain America to the Falcon.
Yeah.
And so the Falcon became Captain America for a great many number of years, actually. And even after...
And nice to have a black Captain America.
Well, so he's still got the wings, and he uses the shield and everything, and it's a really cool sort of moment here at the end of the day. And the Falcon's stories kind of take on a lot more of their... the Falcon stories have kind of always been a little racially charged, obviously, by their nature of when they were created in the 1970s.
Yeah.
And just kind of who the character is in a lot of cases as well. A lot of people would have a problem with seeing an African-American Captain America at the end of the day.
True in the 50s and 60s, true certainly further back than that. It's not so true once you get into the, I would think...
The late 90s, early 2000s, probably. I think there's a lot more, I think...
Everything is racially charged.
Everything is kind of, right now I think everything would be very racially charged. And in the comics that was very much the case as well for a period of time. And again, so how to phrase this here? I think it's interesting that the writers decided to dive into those particular topics, because I think it speaks to an audience that has not had that opportunity in the past.
But I mean, it's reflective of society.
I absolutely think it's very much reflective of society, and I think, and a lot of this here is a push from Marvel to, in a lot of cases here, rebrand some of their major characters here. Like there's been a big push in the comic books here to have newer versions of the characters existing by new people here. So Miss Marvel is a Pakistani girl that's got some powers very similar to Mr. Fantastic in the comics right now.
Oh, I like that.
And that's something that should be coming to Marvel, to Disney Plus here within the next year and a half or so too. Captain Marvel was supplanted by what was Miss Marvel, and Captain Marvel being a guy at one point here, the mantle moving over to Carol Danvers here as well. You have an African American girl that becomes Ironheart, the new Iron Man.
Oh, very nice.
And you get a couple different characters that get, that new people take over their roles. Again, my favorite one here is Korean Hulk. So
I'm laughing because I'm just trying to envision.
So back in the early 2010s here, they introduced kind of like this smart sort of like Korean kid that was kind of in the background of a lot of stuff happening, working with a lot of other people here. Bruce Banner as the Hulk attempts to save him from a gamma explosion, but as a result here, the powers of the Hulk, the gamma radiation gets, taken out of Bruce Banner and passed on to this kid instead. And the kid doesn't have the same temperament that the Hulk does at all. He actually has full control over his entire human body. There's a great photo of this kid with with this electronic wristband on his left arm, eating, these noodles, chopsticks and everything, but it's the Hulk.
Well,
it's really kind of cool.
I love the idea. I personally am a big fan of the Black Panther movie.
Oh, Black Panther movie is easily one of my favorite movies of all.
Oh gosh, it's such a lush. It's so lush and fully
realized. It's this beautiful Afro futuristic sort of setting where it's incorporative of not only traditional African society, but also this futuristic sort of world and nature, and how everything's kind of kept a lot of the spirit and the homage to what was their African culture, architecture, and ideals here, and even the weapons are the kind of same. Like I love those cloak that are basically just like giant shields at the end of the day, and you have to actually like pull your cloak over to create the shield, or how all their weapons are vibranium and they have this weird kind of ping when they hit each other.
It's all fleshed out. It's all and you're gonna laugh at this analogy, but it feels to me the same way. I love the Santa Claus because how fully they realize the North Pole.
Oh, I love the Santa Claus's realization of everything.
Yeah. So and how fully fleshed out it is, and how again, lush is the word that comes to mind. And to me, the Black Panther is the same way. Everything has been so well conceived. It's just beautifully done.
Oh no, yeah. The director of it literally said, like, I get one chance at this here.
But
and they let him do basically anything he wanted to do it here.
Well, what I loved about it when it came out was we see so many. I mean, superheroes are for a long time were just male, and eventually you got some estrogen in there, but it's very white, not very white, very white. And
you mean our superheroes?
Yes.
Yes.
They're very white.
I was actually talking about this with another one of my colleagues who, so there's another series called Invincible, and a couple of the characters there are either gendered flipped. Shrinking Ray, I think, is one of the characters. So Ray spelled R-E-A. So it's a woman. So Shrinking Ray.
Oh, very cool. Okay.
There's another character who was very white in the initial comics, but now is more of a Hispanic origin here. And I was talking about how, and no offense to white people at all, but white people are very boring.
Well, it isn't reflective of society. Shouldn't your heroes reflect your society?
Well, not only that your heroes can reflect your society at the end of the day, but I think what gives a lot of room to creators here at the end of the day to say, you know, Heimdall doesn't need to be another white guy. Let's make him Idris Elba. You know?
Yeah.
And everyone, you know, and again, when that initial Thor movie came out, a lot of people of the right wing persuasion, conservatives were very upset with Heimdall being black. It's like, how dare you change the character here? But like,
a good actor can pull it off, though.
Well, not even just a good actor, just an actor can pull it off. That guy could have been, you know, that in other characters in there. One of them is Asian, you know, when he was a white guy here, like, you know, anybody can pull off that character. They don't necessarily have to be the white person that it was initially envisioned at. Because again, when these characters created back in like in the 50s and 60s here, like, who was predominantly writing them? White people. Yeah. And it's not until much later in time where we get more African, Hispanic, Asian, Latino, you know, Indian, you know, Middle Eastern writers that are able to imprint their own nature of it here. Like, I kind of don't care in a lot of those cases. Now, I would care a lot more if you took like the Black Panther and made him into a white person at the end, because it basically takes out a lot of what their character was. But I was talking to him about, you know, like, hey, if they do a Marvel movie here, like, Charles Xavier should be Hispanic. Yeah. You know, like, like, you can kind of paint it a little bit where, like, you don't really see it here, maybe, or like his Latino his Latinoism doesn't make a huge difference at the end of the day. But you have to make Magneto German Jewish, because that's kind of a thing of his character here. You know, you can make Rogue, which is this Southern girl from Louisiana. Mm-hmm. Make her Creole, make her from, you know, Haiti, make her, you know, that's a character that, you know, as long as she's a Southern Louisiana girl, you're fine. Yeah, totally fine. I mean,
well, and there you even, because you have in Louisiana a large number of Vietnamese.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, you could even do it that way too. Again, I mean, they're making a new Little Mermaid, live action Little Mermaid, and they're black.
And there's been an outcry over that.
I don't care. I'm really interested to see what that looks like.
I was really astounded by the response to that. Astounded and disappointed. Mm-hmm. By the response to that, because it just is so wrong. It's wrong.
I appreciate that Disney is going in that particular direction because the movie's going to be a smash hit one way or another anyways. Take a risk and do something different.
Well,
you know?
and I mean, you've hit Cinderella, white, Belle, white. I mean, at what point it just...
Well, again, at what point...
It isn't reflective of our society.
It's not reflective of our society, and it's not opportunities, Again, these are movies, that are going to make money one way or another anyways.
Yeah.
Again, one of the things I was really excited about was in Aladdin, almost the entire cast, with the exception, I think, of Will Smith, are of Middle Eastern, Indian, heritage.
Yeah.
And I think that movie is much better off for that because you give a lot of these actors chances to do these roles, and you give a lot of credence to what is the location where they're at.
Yeah.
I am really, as a tangent here, I opine that if they decide to do Snow White, it can't be a movie. It has to be a TV series where it's 7 episodes long, and you only follow it from one of the different dwarfs every episode.
Oh, I love that idea.
So you start from Doc, and then the next episode is Grumpy, then you move through Bashful, and you only ever see what's going on from their vantage point.
I want to see Happy's episode because I like Happy.
Yeah, but again, you don't see. But again, you see. But the entire story plays out over the course of that 40-minute episode.
Yeah.
And maybe you don't always see the ending, or you don't always see the parts of the beginning. But when the character's not there, they don't know what's happening in the next room, or what's going on with other characters. So you're constantly being left out of events that are happening, and so you don't get the full scope and picture until you see all 7.
So maybe you have an 8th episode from Snow White's vantage point.
Potentially, yeah. So you might have one last vantage point from Snow White here at the end of the day, and I think that would be kind of a cool television series, just on the premise alone.
Yeah, big outcry at the reopening of Disneyland.
Oh.
On the Snow White ride, because the prince kisses her at the end while she's asleep, and she didn't give her consent. I'm not sure how to feel about that.
Well,
I get why people have a reaction to it, but it is part of the fairy tale.
It's a part of the fairy tale. It's also...
Same thing happens in Sleeping Beauty.
The same thing happens with Sleeping Beauty again. I mean, it's just a... I decry, we go back to, people that were upset about the Dr. Seuss family deciding that they weren't going to publish some of the books, which were A, not making a whole lot of money for them, but B, were also not in line with the cultural values of the area, of the nature, and a lot of people on the right wing were very upset about that happening. The
whole cancel culture. But the family made the decision,
mm-hmm.
and as you said, the decision was in part because they weren't making money.
They weren't making money, and they weren't reflective of what was
right. But to liken it, I'll liken it to when we were kids. The books were See Jane Run, See Spot Run, See, and those books those were the primers that we learned on,
mm-hmm.
And they were taken out of publication because they were dated. Things get dated.
Mm-hmm.
Not everything is Moby Dick. So a lot of things get dated, and it's okay that they're sort of retired.
Yeah, and I don't have a particular problem with that. Now, I think, and I liken that, to people being outraged over, the prince kissing Sleeping Beauty at the very end of the day here. I think if you if we redid the movie now, maybe there's a slightly different context. There's a different sort of element here at the end of the day.
They gave Rapunzel a different ending.
Mm-hmm. They gave Rapunzel a different ending, I think.
She didn't marry right away.
Mm-hmm. They don't even really kiss until much until the very, very end.
Well, and in Frozen, Anna doesn't get married right off.
No, I mean, I think in Frozen they were very much playing against stereotype intentionally. But I think for what is Snow White here at the end of the day, you do have to kind of look at what was the original movie in its context at the day.
Yeah.
At the day, and maybe there's a middle ground at the end of the day, but I mean, it's also, it's also one ride in Disneyland. I don't see people finding a reason to boycott the entire ride, or the entire amusement park over that here, and I think that Disney wouldn't care if that's the case, because again, I mean, like, people have been claiming to boycott Disneyland for
Ages and ages and ages. Yeah.
I, for example, here, I don't shop at Walmart.
I don't shop at Hobby Lobby.
Yeah, and I don't shop at Hobby Lobby. I don't eat at Chick-fil-A either. Those businesses still very clearly do well at the end of the day, so my boycott of them doesn't really make a difference at the end of the day. You know, but I still...
And I will not buy my pillow.
No, I'm not interested in a My Pillow. It looks very uncomfortable.
Just saying.
I prefer my pillows to be very firm and hard.
Yeah.
So,
back to Falcon and Winter Soldier.
Back to the... We'll call this episode Tangents.
Yeah.
To go back to the Falcon here, at a certain point here, there is a prison known as Pleasant Hill, which houses supervillains. And inside of this prison, they find a cosmic cube there that's taken the form of a young girl named Kobik. Now, cosmic cubes have taken on human forms previously, because again, they are part and parcel of the Beyonders from the alternate portal, which are sentient creatures in and of themselves as well. And so the cubes have taken on forms before in the past. This was also around the same time.
So is it like being possessed by the cube?
No, it's like the cube just took on this form of a child.
Okay.
You know, it's like 8-year-old, little girl.
Okay.
This was also around the same time that Captain America was dying.
Oh, when he's a 90-year-old man.
Yeah, he's a 90-year-old man, and the cosmic cube actually revives Captain America, returns him back to Prime.
Form, okay.
gives him back his super soldier formula, reverts the aging, and brings him back to what had been his prime at that particular point. Never mind the fact that... so do you remember in Endgame when Steve Rogers is confronting everybody in the elevator, kind of very similar to what was Civil War?
Yeah.
And he leans into the one individual, says, no, that's okay. And he leans in and is like, Hail Hydra.
That's right, yes.
So he leans in, and they're all just kind of like stunned and looking at us like, oh, he's with us. Okay, cool. Walk out with her. And he never has to punch a single person there.
Yeah.
So that's actually in relationship to what happened here, is that it's not initially known until almost 2-3 years later, when Captain America kicks a guy out of a helicopter in the comics and looks at it and whispers to him, Hail Hydra. And it was a big shock to all of us in the comic book industry, and the comic readers, fast. It's like, wait, Captain America just said Hail Hydra?
Yeah.
What the hell? And come to find out that the version that Kubrick restored wasn't actually the original Steve Rogers, but what she did is that she had already been brainwashed, she had already been changed and programmed by Hydra, and brought back a fascist version of Captain America that had actually been a Hydra sleeper agent.
So has he been sort of double agenting this whole time?
So at this point here, once he gets revived by Kubrick's here, this version of Steve Rogers, which I call Steve Rogers F for fascist.
Okay.
Because I couldn't figure out another term for him here.
Well, it is sort of Steve Rogers for fucked up.
Yeah.
But,
that too. So, like, what ends up happening here is the Falcon actually gives up the mantle back Sam gives up the title of Captain America back to Steve Rogers as the rightful owner of it here. Only for years later to find out that, this guy is a Hydra agent. And he actually, this version of Steve Rogers eventually gives up the mantle of Captain America once again, and it takes on like this leader of Hydra sort of thing here. The Falcon ends up becoming Captain America again for a period of time. And through the events here, they actually go and find, the original cosmic cube of Kobik here, because she had been shattered at this point here. Piece it back together, and then free the original Steve Rogers, who then eventually, gets brought back to his full prime once again, beats the alternate version, of fascist Steve Rogers, and takes back over the mantle of Captain America once again.
Okay, so let's go back to these cubes.
Mm-hmm.
These cubes are all powerful and therefore very dangerous.
Yes.
I mean, is there a need, sort of a la Civil Wars, to create something that registers them and tracks them? And
So cosmic cubes are kind of on a similar level to Infinity Stones.
okay,
Minus the notion that they can't affect the soul or minds of individuals, and they're not able to change time at all, because the Beyonders don't have that. The Beyonders don't have those abilities.
The abilities, okay.
But again, the matter and creation and reality warping, those are amongst its powers that it has. Transportation, teleportation. Basically what would happen if you took the Reality Stone, the Power Stone, and the Space Stone all together. But it's also theorized that in order to be able to even rival an Infinity Stone, you would need like thousands of them that were all connected singularly together to do it.
Okay.
So
the Infinity Stones are the more all-powerful.
Mm-hmm. They're
thing.
more all-powerful.
Although they are centered on a particular skill set.
Mm-hmm. As where the Comic Cube's got a little bit more varied power set, but
a little bit more universal.
Yeah, but it's a lot weaker by comparison.
Okay.
But this also really does depend a lot on the writers here. I mean, like how much they take either advantage of the Infinity Stones or how much they take advantage of the Cosmic Cubes.
But canon is canon, and certainly in the MCU, you have to be.
The MCU, I think, has done a much better job of being consistent about it. And
yeah, you have to. You'd have all sorts of outcry if you were uncanonical. Uncanonical.
Yeah, if you weren't canonical to what was the original thing. And I think in a lot of cases, it's not really until we see Thanos really utilizing the various stones that we really get a sense of what they can do.
Yeah.
Like you get a hint of it of what the Time Stone does in Doctor Strange. You kind of understand that like the Mind Stone projects beams, but not really sure what it does at the end of the day.
Yeah.
The Soul Stone is also again very vague. The Power Stone clearly gives you like omnipotent sort of power in Guardians of the Galaxy, and even the Reality Stone is not well described or utilized or shown in the course of Thor: The Dark World here at all. So like it's not really until you get to Thanos that you really get to see what these stones in theory could do. And even then, I wager that like their full showcase isn't fully shown at the end of the day. As where I think we're in the comics, because you have literally 40, 50 years of these comics and these things come up again and again and again.
They get reused as tools.
Yeah, that like you tend to find different writers that say, oh, well, when he was using the Reality Stone, he wasn't, really using the full power of the Reality Stone at all. No,
it has additional powers. I found additional powers.
There was either additional powers or like he used it in a different way, which was totally plausible. Versus like, yeah, it's a cosmic cube. It does this, this, and this, and like it's being used at like its full potential, but it's not as powerful as an Infinity Stone. No, they're so much more powerful. Yeah, it's there's a very kind of like straddling line. I think at the very end of the day here where you think something is one thing and it's really actually not, and it really all depends. I mean, at the end of the day, if you really want to be kind of a canonical sort of like lore geek at the end of the day, like.
Oh, I like that term. Is that an official term? Lore geek?
There are lore geeks out there. They run wikis.
Oh, that's true. Good point.
The Marvel Wiki, Wikia, which is very extensive.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah.
I mean, so globally, since we started doing this, how long have we been doing it? 2 years now?
Almost a little over 2 years now.
A little over 2 years. Globally, I've been amazed because I do a little research when we get to the second episode of it, and at how many resources are out there and the time and care people have taken. There's a certain consistency to them.
The documentation of it.
Yeah. A lot of these wikis are set up the same using a format.
But yeah, they have the same general template here. Like they have a template for individual characters, individual things. They have
the drill downs are pretty consistent.
Yeah, they have common banners for like this needs expanding, or this needs more citations, or this is a work in progress sort of thing. Stuff like that here.
But they're surprisingly consistent, and you're able to navigate them pretty much using the same platform, and the amount of time and effort people have put into this is pretty stunning.
Oh yeah, no, and again, it's teams of people. I mean, like I've at a BlizzCon one time, I met one of the guys who runs Wowpedia, which is the World of Warcraft, Wikipedia thing at the end of the day. And it's not, I asked him like, well, how many people are on the team for Wowpedia here? It's like, oh, there's like 8 of us.
Yeah.
I was like, there's only 8 of you guys? Like, well, we get a lot of people. There's 8 of us that moderate it, but there's a lot of people that add on to it constantly, and we make sure that everything is consistent with, linkage and links, pictures, and making sure that everything's consistent with how it's presented on the website here. But
Okay,
people are
well-
adding in the different quests and the different
I
tools.
contribute to Wikipedia, especially on El Mirador, because when we hiked it, there are lots of facts missing,
Yeah.
and so I contributed to that, and it got accepted.
If you ever want a fun read, and again, this is an episode of Tangents, read the comment section for Michael Jackson's Wikipedia article. It is bonkers.
Really, because every once in a while you'll get a product on Amazon.
Oh yeah, no,
where people have gone bonkers on the reviews. I forget what Ivanka had some product on there for a while, and the comment section was a delightful afternoon
afternoon read.
diversion. Yeah.
So when we leave the Falcon here, Falcon is actually working with a veterans assistance team, hospital here, and basically trying to help people who have been victims of wars and stuff. And he eventually reconnects with Bucky Barnes, the Winter Soldier, and that's how the two of them start working together. Now, again, I think it's kind of well known from the comics here that the Falcons primarily got the flight suit and the ability to talk with Redwing, but he eventually gets the power to communicate with other birds as well. He eventually obviously gets the shield, and so he's very skilled with the shield. He's a lot of these individuals who either have superpowers from different gadgets, tools with them, or don't have any superpowers, are all pretty much listed as being at peak human condition. Peak stamina, peak agility, all that other stuff here. In this case here, he's a master martial artist because he's been training with Captain America for literally years, decades at this point. He's also actually a master aerialist in the sense that because of his flight and his martial arts training, he's better at fighting in the air than either Iron Man or even Captain Marvel in some cases. Comparatively.
Yeah.
Also as a former pilot as well, he's got that thing here.
So he understands airflow and all of those things.
And the MCU version of the Falcon is not too dissimilar. At the end of the day here, I think one of the major differences is that still befriends Steve Rogers and still kind of rescues him at a certain helps actually rescue Steve Rogers at the end of the day by keeping him at his house and helping him get down to the bottom of the Hydra agents inside of S.H.I.E.L.D. His wings are a part of a government program for the Falcon program here that basically had paratroop rescue individuals in there. He eventually gets a new set of wings from Tony Stark after the events of with the Winter Soldier.
Okay.
We see him again in Age of Ultron, helping out a little bit, and then eventually he is a part of the team, part of the Captain America's Avengers, basically. With Bucky Barnes, Wanda. You've got Ant-Man, and also Hawkeye as well. By the end of Civil War, he's basically locked up, and he gets freed by Captain America. He's there in Infinity War helping out, but he's gone for most of the events after that into Endgame. And by the time we get to the end of Endgame here, he's snapped back into existence, or as everyone calls it, blipping.
Yeah.
He was blipped back into his existence. And when we last see him, he's being, we see an older Steve Rogers passing the shield on to, Sam.
Yeah.
So, and it's not even, and again, the thing here is that it's not actually the same shield at all. It's a different shield. Because the new shield has a little bit more indentations in it that look a little more tactical indentations versus the original one was very only just had the rings and just had
Yeah, I'm looking at yours.
Yeah, so you see kind of the different little like kind of shapes in the star and kind of like little kind of blocked out rectangles along the rings, so a little bit more tactical-ish looking. And then we get to the Winter Soldier, which was Marvel's excuse why you don't have teenage sidekicks.
Everybody has teenage sidekicks. Come on, what about Robin?
Okay, so or at least why Marvel characters didn't.
Yeah,
So,
no, I get it. There are lots of reasons not to.
So Bucky Barnes, introduced in 1940, was probably about 15, maybe 16 years old when he becomes Bucky at the end of the day to Captain America here. Both of them are Bucky being having lied his way into the military at this point. So throughout World War II, they are working together to stop the Nazis, as you do in World War II.
Yeah.
It's in the course of where Captain America and Bucky are actually trying to capture a villain here that he escapes on an airplane with all of them together. And while he escapes, the airplane is plummeting into the ocean. And Bucky doesn't get out, parachutes out, but gets caught on the wing. And basically is considered, MIA at this point here. He's lost in the Atlantic Ocean. Steve, who was on that same thing, literally dives in to save his friend. But both of them get frozen in the Arctic Ocean here and get sent into suspended animation. About a year later, the Soviets are actually trying to find Captain America, but find, Bucky Barnes instead. And they decide that, he was with Captain America, and he is at peak human condition, but he's missing a left arm. So they make him a cyborg left arm, or cybernetic left arm, and reprogram him into the Winter Soldier. And the Winter Soldier, basically every kind of semi-famous or well-known assassination is, in theory, credited. Like, as an example, the Wikipedia article gives the example is like, he's the second gunman that killed JFK.
Yeah.
So every sort of like major sort of assassination is usually kind of qualified under the Winter Soldier having done it as a spy here. And even at a certain point here, he actually trains Natasha Romanoff during Operation Wolf Spider.
Wolf Spider.
I know, which is kind of a cool name at the end of the day, right?
Wolf Spider.
But he's the one who actually trains Natasha on how to, be a fighter and a killer at a certain point here. And they actually have a romantic relationship there as well.
As one should.
As you can.
Yeah.
However, as a result of a failed assassination mission, it's decided that, now we're just going to reprogram him every single time, but we're going to keep him on, suspended and we're going to put him into cryostasis until we need him.
Yeah.
So he's only ever pulled out periodically throughout the years, and it's kind of also to slow down the aging process as well. It's not until about 2003, 2004 for us, but in the comics here that the Winter Soldier is being utilized to basically steal a cosmic cube from the Red Skull, who's created a brand new one here. Apparently, the Red Skull knows how to make them. And as a result of trying to stop the Red Skull, to basically stop the Red Skull.
So there's not a finite number of the cosmic cubes?
No.
They can be...
Again, that's why in theory you could have millions of them out there. It's a matter of the technology to get to it, which is very limited and very time-consuming to generate and make at the end of the day. Because again, you have to create these force fields that allow you to open up a portal to get to the Beyonders and then suck out the energy from the Beyonders to do it. It's very difficult, which is why they're not common, but they're kind of more or less more common in Captain America stories for some reason.
Okay.
Because again, of the secretive nature, that's where you would get a lot of that from. Shield apparently has a cosmic cube.
Does it use it?
Not that I'm aware of. Where the intention is that they were trying to get one in order to be able to safeguard themselves from the potentiality of it, of events like that.
Well, if your enemy has one, it's like a nuclear bomb. You want to have one too.
Yeah, cosmic cube deterrence.
Yeah, there you go.
But in the process of trying to, in this point here, Captain America, Steve Rogers, has also found out that the Winter Soldier is Bucky Barnes. He's been trying to get a hold of him for a number of years
How does Steve get found and unthawed?
Steve at one point gets found by the initial version of the Avengers, which again would have just been Hawkeye, Iron Man, Thor, and the Hulk. So he gets found by them, I think by the second Avengers comic here, frozen in ice in Antarctica. And they go and say, and basically they thaw him out, and he's like, okay, what do we do next?
Step two.
But this would have been probably about early 1960s, 1965 or so, when the Avengers would have been coming out at that point here. Because that would have been the revitalization of Captain America. Because there was a long period of time after World War II where Captain America wasn't in Marvel Comics. And even it used to be, that there's only 3 characters that stay dead, in comic book history. That's Uncle Ben, Jason Todd, which was the second Robin, and Bucky Barnes. Again, in both of those 2 cases, Bucky Barnes and Jason Todd have actually been resurrected here as well. Or retconned to have actually still been alive after the events of their killings.
Poor Uncle Ben.
There's been a case as well for Jean Grey to also stay dead for a period of time as well, and she's actually for the longest period of time actually been dead as well, which is kind of impressive, almost like 15 plus years, I want to say.
Cool.
Which is fascinating because again, like Marvel, comic book lore as it is, is okay with with killing characters but then bringing them back. It's an entire storyline in the DC universe called Blackest Night, where the idea was that the God of Death was leaving the door open for superheroes to keep coming back as sleeper agents that he could eventually take control over with black rings and make them into his puppets at the end of the day, so he could take over the universe. Which is a clever idea, actually.
Might steal it.
Well, I don't see you trying to take over the world. At worst, it would be, a sense of okay, now all of us will knit.
We all become hookers. I crochet. I do both. I'm bistitchal. I actually do both pretty equally. And equally well.
I like to describe my dad I like to describe my father as, oh, look at all those hoes.
Yeah.
Because he's a farmer.
Yeah. Now I'm a farmer, and I dig it. It's a Who song.
Sometimes I come back to the bathroom and I think to myself, man, I'm no longer full of shit. Then
My running line is did everything come out okay?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
5 pounds lighter.
Yeah.
So in the event of both Winter Soldier and Captain America fighting over this cosmic cube, the cosmic cube restores Bucky's memories of being Bucky. And Bucky, overflowing with emotion and remorse, can't stand himself, and attempts suicide by shattering the cosmic cube.
Does he remember that he killed Tony Stark's parents?
In the comics, he hadn't killed Tony Stark's parents.
Oh, okay.
Not that I'm aware of. Not that I've read necessarily.
Oh, okay.
But so much as that, when he goes to destroy the cosmic cube, it actually just teleports him away. And for the next couple of years, he actually spends a majority of his time tracking down the people from the Soviet Union who were controlling him at the time, and punishing them and trying to basically kill them. After the events of the comic book Civil War, so this would have been about 2000, 2008ish or so. The very end of it here is basically Tony Stark and Iron Man fighting one another, but Captain America basically looks around at all the devastation, all the not only death that's happening with superheroes, but all the damage that they're creating, and basically, basically says, "I surrender." And the idea there for Captain America was basically this fight is literally killing good superheroes, good people at the end of the day, and is causing a lot of destruction. And, I may disagree with this entire Registration Act, but we can't keep having people dying like this. So he gives up and surrenders himself to the government, where he's put on trial and in the process of being moved from the prison that he's in to the courthouse, he is assassinated.
That sucks.
Well, he's assassinated in the comic books here, and he's assassinated by the Red Skull, who actually shoots him with a time bullet, which basically kind of locks him in time. So he appears dead, but he's actually just kind of in a frozen state, I guess is the best way to describe it.
He's in stasis.
Darn stasis. But Bucky actually takes this very, very personally and decides that he's going to go after the Red Skull who shot him and had him assassinated, and he's going to go after Tony Stark. Because Tony Stark is now, at this point in time, is the head of S.H.I.E.L.D. He's actually supplanted Nick Fury. And he believes that it was Tony Stark who caused these events and had Captain America killed at the end of the day. Well, Bucky goes and actually tries to beat up the Red Skull and actually fails, and actually rescued by Falcon and a Sharon Carter, similar to our Sharon Carter.
Okay.
And then he goes after Tony Stark, and actually he's really close to beating up Tony Stark. But then Tony Stark, tells him, I heard what Captain America's final wishes were. And his final wish was for me to save Bucky Barnes, you, from your violence and your insanity and madness that you're plummeting down. And, in the way in basically what Tony Stark says, in order for him to be able to do that, he needs to become Captain America. So Bucky Barnes becomes Captain America.
Interesting turn.
So,
okay.
And Bucky Barnes actually agrees to be Captain America here. However, he wants all the mental implants and thought programming taken out of him, which they get done. And he doesn't want to be held, and he doesn't want to be controlled by either S.H.I.E.L.D., the U.S. government, or Tony Stark at the end of the day, which Tony Stark agrees to. And so Bucky, as the no longer as the Winter Soldier, as Captain America, dons a very similar costume, gets the shield and acts as Captain America for the next 3 or 4 years, actually. Even after a point in which it's found that, Steve Rogers is alive and is actually, able to take back up the mantle of Captain America. Bucky's actually willing to give back up the title to Steve Rogers with the intention that, you're Captain America. I was only acting in your place. But Steve is like, no, you need to be Captain America right now a lot more, because you're now just finally getting the backing of the government. You're on you've reinstated the Avengers, and you're actually, doing a lot of good now.
Yeah.
I've been Captain America for long enough. It's it's your turn, and you're doing a pretty good job of it as it is. And Captain America kind of acts as like a similar kind of a U.S. agent almost. It wears kind of a uniform that's kind of similar to his Captain America outfit, but not really. But he very much makes a point of saying that he is not Captain America at all. Even when he goes to the president here, and the president pardons Captain America and not Steve Rogers at the end of the day. But Steve Rogers is like, well, I'm still here for America, and the president's like, I understand, and we'll use you accordingly. It's not until... So, do you remember Thor's hammer?
Yes.
Okay, so a big part of Age of Ultron is everyone trying to lift up Thor's hammer at a certain point. They're not.
None of them can.
None of them can because they're not worthy.
Yeah.
Well, the Red Skull tried to get his own hammer at one point. So the Red Skull, I mean, is kind of to put it mildly, loves his mystical stuff here. Any way he can get power quickly, and a lot of that has come through various tools, weaponry, magical stuff here. At the end of the day, basically super science that creates magic. What he ended up doing here is he actually was able to summon a Asgardian hammer from a individual known as Skade, who is the queen of the Frost Giants.
Okay, we're getting a little.
We're going off again. Like, we go off on comic tangents here, but you'll have to follow along.
Okay.
So I apologize. It's not a big portion of the story, but basically the Red Skull couldn't lift up this hammer at all because he wasn't worthy enough to lift it up. But his daughter, because he has a daughter who goes by the name of Sin.
Oh, lovely.
Mm-hmm. She's a wonderful little creature here as well. Is able to pick it up, and she decides that she's going to gather other hammers and give them to other people as well that kind of mind control them here. So, like, the Hulk gets one. I forget who else gets a couple of. The Thing gets one as well.
I assume that since her name is Sin, not hammers to be used for good.
No.
Okay.
She actually, with what she calls her worthy, so all these people with these Asgardian, godlike powers now, goes to DC to basically take it over. Now, Bucky is there as Captain America, but he's getting trounced, and he basically sends Black Widow, who he's been on and off with a relationship with while as Captain America. Basically, as it says, go get more help, I'm going to hold them off. And I get trounced at the end of the day here. It's what if Thor and Captain America fought each other at the end of the day, and Thor wasn't holding back.
Yeah.
And basically, it's thought that Bucky Barnes dies at the end of that event.
But he didn't.
He doesn't, because nobody dies. Nobody can stay dead.
You've got plot armor.
Mm-hmm. If you got a name, apparently you can survive a death.
Yeah.
Except if your name is Uncle Ben.
Poor Uncle.
Poor Uncle Ben. So, in the process of Bucky's death, Captain America takes back up, Steve Rogers takes back up the mantle of Captain America, and Iron Man, or what he ends up doing is he actually ends up, going with Thor to Asgard to basically convince, Odin here is like, we need to stop this, we need better weapons to do that. So a bunch of people get, like, Asgardian weapons. So, like, Iron Man gets a new, do you remember the big kind of hulking thing from the first Thor movie? It's kind of got, like, these little plates and all this fire that's in it. So everyone kind of gets, like, weapons akin to that and takes on forms akin to that. So Iron Man, Wolverine, the She-Hulk, Miss Marvel, Doctor Strange, they all get, like, different kind of Asgardian weapons that they use to defeat the worthy. I think they're called the Mighty. Mm-hmm. And they defeat them at the end of the day. And Steve Rogers continues to be Captain America up until he loses his super soldier formula. But Bucky, who is saved by Nick Fury, who gives him something called the Infinity Formula.
Ooh.
So the Infinity Formula, based off of what is the elixir of life, which basically kind of like stops the aging process and leaves you fully intact. Mm-hmm. The Infinity Formula is similar to what would be now the Super Soldier Formula, except you have to get new doses of it.
So you need boosters.
Yeah, basically what it was is that Nick Fury's actually been around since World War II, like same thing as Captain America and Bucky, and to a certain extent here. But he's been active the entire time, and as a result of being active, he found the Infinity Formula, which allows him to slow down his aging process, keep him at a peak human qualities at the end of the day, and allows him to keep going. For him, though, he had to he basically was getting he basically had to strike a bargain up with a person who he didn't want to make a bargain with, who can make the Infinity Formula, and has to go back regularly to it there, and is actually at certain points blackmailed by the guy to keep getting the formula. In any case here, unlike the Marvel counterpart, where like Bucky Barnes apparently did get a super soldier formula from Hydra, it wasn't noticed, I guess, properly. Now with the Infinity Formula, he's got a pseudo super soldier serum formula in him, but he's got to go back and get regular shots of the Infinity Formula, otherwise it doesn't actually work. But at this point here, Bucky, fakes his death so he can kind of be a underground guy again, a secret agent more or less, and returns to his identity as the Winter Soldier. So eventually joins a group. He eventually joins a group called the Thunderbolts, which are all like gun-toting, superheroes.
Yeah.
He eventually becomes the Man on the Wall, which is a space defense force which attempts to stop extraterrestrial stuff from coming to Earth here, like it's like kind of like that last barrier sort of thing going on. And eventually he ends up working with the Falcon on a couple different items here as well. Now, having watched, I have watched Falcon and the Winter Soldier here. It's been out for, I think, at least the last 2 months at minimum here, or at least the last month here. So it's been out for quite a while. I can assure you that a lot of this will come into play.
Okay.
A fair amount of this.
So I am properly prepped.
You are being very properly prepped here, and as well as the rest of our audience here.
So this is basically a primer on how to watch.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Or kind of to notice when stuff happens.
Okay.
There's a lot of other stuff that we can't talk about until you finish watching it.
Because there's spoilers?
Because the spoilers, and because like you will have questions, and I don't want to spoil them for you.
Okay.
So just kind of keep that in mind. The episodes are about 40 minutes each, 35, 40 minutes each. Not too dissimilar to like The Mandalorian.
Oh, Wanda Vision?
Yeah, Wanda Vision and The Mandalorian here. But there's only 6 of them, so they're not that long.
Okay.
So it's a reasonably it's not too difficult of a watch at the end of the day here, realistically. But to kind of set the scene for you, we were coming into the Marvel timeline here. Okay. So we're primarily coming right out of Endgame, and I want to say it's probably been about, let's say, 6 months after the events of Endgame here, probably. Yeah, or almost maybe a full year, actually. So
everybody's back.
So everyone's back. Everyone's blinked back into existence here. Now, obviously, both Sam and Bucky have been gone during the course of the events between Infinity War and Endgame. Mm-hmm. And so they're reestablishing themselves in their world here.
Okay.
You have Bucky, who is working with the U.S. government. Now, both of them are classified as Avengers at this point here, so they kind of act outside of the military government, but work with them. Mm-hmm. Because of their status as Avengers. So Bucky is working with the U.S. government to find Hydra agents in order to arrest them. So he's trying to make amends, but he's also visiting a psychologist here to help him with his emotional turmoil at the end of the day. He feels since he's been able to get the programming out of him here, he feels very guilty for all the murders and stuff and all the people that he's killed over the course of the last couple decades, I guess is the best way to put it here. And he's trying to find a way to make amends for that. Sam, on the other hand, is, being an Avenger. He's working with military governments and such in order to facilitate, things that need to be done, protect people here. There's no Avenger level threats at all, but he's still being, an everyday superhero, I guess, for the military is the best way to describe it here. The real thing that you need to know going into this here, however, is the GRC, the Global Repatriation Council. So after the snap, they basically, in the time frame between Infinity War and Endgame, because 50% of the population disappeared, they basically got rid of borders. So there's no more, a lot of the country's borders were opened up in order to facilitate people just living.
Yeah.
People, who were still around, after a period of time were able to buy new homes, houses, get new apartments, live in new places. And a lot of people who hadn't been families had started to become families at that point here.
What do we do about drinking age?
Well, I still think
Because some people who were snapped at the age of 16.
Well, again, the Peter Parker Far From Home, or Spider-Man Far From Home here literally makes the point of saying, like, the one kid that they met 5 years ago who was a little shrimp is now grown up to be, a senior in high school. The rest of them are still, like, sophomores. Like, yeah, I remember him in middle school. He was so tiny. Now look at him. It's 5 years later. He's grown to this tall, creature at the end, guy at the end of the day. The way they've described it here is that it's based off of how old you were now. So again, if you were blipped for 5 years, it don't count like when you were born. They count, there's like a new thing on your driver's license that says if you were blipped or not.
Okay.
So if you're, so if you got blipped, you're not of drinking age until like you're 26 and not 21, I guess.
Okay.
So, but the council basically was this entire, so what ended up happening here again, all these people who were in these different countries, different places, are all kind of correlated together and making new families, communities, and everything like that. Well, everyone comes back. And as a part of trying to, so the people that came back basically, almost all their stuff is gone. In many
houses are gone, their apartments are gone.
Their houses are gone, they're bulldozed or even burned down, or
somebody else took possession of them.
Somebody took possession or is living on here. And in order to make those people that got blipped whole, the council is basically, trying to get these people back to what was normal at the end of the day, returning them back to the homes in which they purchased, bought, lived in, the places that they lived in, trying to get back as much of their stuff as they can, getting them funds to restart their lives again, to start back from where they left off at the end of the day, But at the same time, there's a lot of refugees from third world countries, unfortunately, that had found new homes, paid for these homes in some cases, and are forcibly being removed out of them.
Yeah. Losing
their jobs for people that were already, that did have these jobs at one point, and have to kind of be given back their old jobs because again, it's not like they did anything wrong. They just weren't there for 5 years, completely out of their own. So it was end up creating a lot of these refugees in these settlement camps here. And a lot of the refugees are not happy because the camps are overcrowded with refugees. They're poor infrastructure, not enough supplies for everybody here. Basically like the worst of what would be settlement camps kind of at the end of the day. And what hasn't really helped here at all is that the GRC basically is reinstating the borders in countries now. And as a result of reestablishing the borders in countries, they're basically at the point now and about to vote on the notion here that, well, we're going to now forcibly deport these people back to the countries of their original origin. So you would end up breaking up a lot of what were these families that got created at the end of the day.
Communities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in communities, to send them back to places that they haven't lived at for 5 years. And may not even know the region or know the people there. All again, you might have children that have never actually ever been to these places, forced to move back to them. In that particular case, and what I find very interesting about Falcon and the Winter Soldier is it takes a lot of what is very period piece for us at this time in our world, and very much makes it very not political but very relevant, and you can see a lot of the analogies and metaphors to stuff that's happening now.
Yeah.
So if you go into this knowing that's there, then I think that might be a little bit easier to swallow and see kind of a little bit.
To understand what the process is. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's one of the big factors going into Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Now again, it's available on Disney Plus. Mm-hmm. Disney Plus, I think, is still only about $9 a month, give or take, or something.
Yeah, it's not expensive. Yeah, I have a membership.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Really, again, I think it's a good deal for the amount of stuff that you get here, especially that in a couple later on this summer, I think in July, we get either July or August, we get Loki.
Which should be fun.
I keep seeing the trailer. I keep seeing a lot of like trailers and bits and pieces of it here. Like it's basically like so Loki took the Space Stone when he was getting during the events of Endgame and created some sort of like time ripple sort of thing that alters time. And apparently, there's an agency that deals with that, with time manipulation and people who do time travel improperly.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
who bend the rules
with Owen Wilson or with Owen Wilson in it.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, that could be.
It looks kind of interesting, and I'm really kind of excited to see it here. If only just because I have no idea what this is based off of, and I have no idea where any of this is going, and I'm really hoping that we get to see Lady Loki at one point.
Oh, what would marry that?
Huh?
What would marry that? What would marry Loki?
Well, no. So there's a so at a certain point here, Loki ends up getting like reborn as Asgardians do for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And when he gets reborn as a woman this time. So it's like a female version of Loki. And it's really kind of interesting. It's a little bit more of an interesting character because she's very more or less Loki at the end of the day, but not quite so evil until much, much later on.
But Loki's a fun kind of evil. I mean, you talk about different forms of chaos. Loki's almost neutral chaos.
Yeah, he's a very
definitely chaos, but
yeah, he definitely plays up whatever's the best for him. Whether somebody else needs to die or not in the process doesn't matter as long as he's happy.
Yeah.
And he's getting what he wants, and he's in a place that he thinks is the best place for him. So again, very curious how they're going to handle Loki here. It'd be interesting to see if Loki is still a part of the Thor movies, or if this is the send off for Tom Hiddleston and the Loki character at the end of the day. So again, curious about that. We also have Black Widow, which is finally going to come out after its year-long hiatus of being in purgatory of COVID.
yeah.
So I think that's coming out here later on here in either late June or July. I think they're just biting the bullet and actually just putting that onto Disney Plus here at the end of the day. So, but never mind the fact that all the Avenger movies are on there. Again, you got Wanda Vision, which is a cool trip. You've got just I think every Disney thing that's ever been in existence. Plus a lot of new stuff that actually, when they bought Fox, as an example, they inherited a lot of the Fox catalog as well. So a lot of that is being put onto Disney Plus as well.
Well, and it sends me a little email with recommended viewing for this week, and it's always interesting to see what's on there because it isn't just the typical what you think of as Disney fare.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, again, we forget the fact that like Disney has, a couple other different studios with stuff that they do. I'd be curious to see if they have a lot of the old Disney afternoon stuff on there, like DuckTales and Darkwing Duck. Speaking of Darkwing Duck, I found this amazing bird mask. I've given you one as well.
Yes.
But I found an issue with it.
Oh, what's up with it?
It's not the
so
mask.
It makes you look like a quacking duck.
Well, yeah, it makes you look like a bird of some sort. If I were to if I want to redo the mask, I want to basically figure out how it's made and make it a little bit more squarish looking. So you could be a duck, because if you could do that, I'm doing Darkwing Duck.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get white. I'm gonna get like a white leggings and like bright orange shoes. I'm gonna get the jacket, and I'm gonna get like a white balaclava and with the mask on it here. With my duck mask and the purple mask, as well as the big giant fedora hat. And I just want to walk around. I just want to walk around as Darkwing Duck.
Not at work.
Not at work. No. For a convention.
For a convention.
Yeah. I wonder if I make the leggings like a feathery sort of quality to them maybe, but I think that's going a little too far. Because the idea here as well is just being able to say like, take off the balaclava, take off the duck mask, and just have the visor on, and it's a human version of Darkwing Duck.
There you go.
So you could do it kind of two different ways. And then you got to have the gas gun that goes along with it. I think that would be cool.
Yeah.
The problem with the mask is my nose. So if you don't notice right away, and it takes people long. It took me a while to fully even notice it myself. My nose is crooked.
Yes, your nose is crooked. It always has been.
Always has been. My nose crooks to the left ever so slightly.
Yeah.
But with the way that mask is, because my nose crooks to the left ever so slightly, the tips don't line up.
Oh.
So they're a little off.
Hadn't noticed that.
I noticed it a couple times, like, no, this is off. And then I finally realized, oh, that's right, because my nose goes a little to the left. That's why.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll have to build that into the mask if I ever make one of these. Make one side just a teeny little bit longer, which will probably happen anyways.
There we go. Yeah.
But again, Disney Plus, I think, is a good value if you're interested in Disney-related properties. If you're certainly interested in the Marvel-based properties, it's the primary way to get it there. I know it's available in a lot of countries here. So that's how you'll want to enjoy, Falcon and the Winter Soldier here. But we're going to put all of our notes here on our website at thenerdtutorialpodcast.com. And then we continue the conversation as well as our Facebook group at facebook.com/nerdtutorialpodcast, all is one word. And then if you ever want to figure out what we've previously watched or things that we are currently discussing, or even just want to drop us a line and make any recommendations for future topics, you can let me know at nerd_tutorial on Twitter. And then if you have the ability to, if you can, wherever you're listening to this here, whether this is on Spotify, Apple, SoundCloud, please leave us a review and give us some stars so that way we can get some more attention for the podcast and help other people be nerdy just like us.
There we go.
But on behalf of myself and my mom, we hope that you guys stay safe out there in these weird times. Then we'll see you guys again next time.
Bye.